Hello and welcome to another episode of Staying Power, a show that is all about building a better life. And frankly, that's what we all want, I think. And so we like to talk about it every single week for an hour. We pick one small slice of one thing that we think can help build a better life. We hope that it resonates with you, and we hope you can apply it in your life right away. Normally, for longtime listeners of the show, you know this is where I usually give my co-host, Ashley Kniebel, a fantastic red carpet intro. A little bit different this week. Ashley was unable to join us this week. Everything's all right for her. She just couldn't make it. However, I do have a fantastic person sitting in right across from me. And for longtime listeners, this might be a familiar face / familiar voice, depending on if you're watching us on our YouTube channel at Staying Power Show, or if you're catching this as a podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, or if you're listening to it live on 1150 AM KKNW in Seattle. And if you're brand new, you don't know who this is, but guess what? Over the next hour, you get to find out. Visiting with us again today, coming back to build on her previous episode here on Staying Power, is speaker, author extraordinaire, exciting moments going on, Kai Roberts-Fu, the author of the newly released, as of yesterday, correct? Mm-hmm. Newly released 12 Missteps, How 12-Step Programs Trip Up Trauma Survivors. Welcome to Kai Roberts-Fu. Hi, Kai.
Hello, JD.
How are you? Welcome back.
I'm glad to be back.
Yeah?
Especially now that the book is released and I can just exhale a little bit.
Yes. How is that exhaling
amazing.
going? Have you been able to do that?
A little bit. I mean, it's been just 24 hours and yesterday was a big day.
Yes.
But it is amazing to actually have it out in the world. I'm going to pick it up now because I'm just so happy to have it.
Oh, yes. Please show it.
And it has pages and everything. It's so much different than seeing things on a computer. Mm-hmm. Or even printing it out myself and proofreading and doing that over and over and over. But when it's actually in a bound book, that was my childhood dream. I wanted to be an author.
I know.
A career as a tango professional got in the middle of all that, but now I'm writing and it is so fulfilling and my feet hurt less.
Yes, which is always good.
Yes.
Always good. And back in episode number 63, by the way, if you want to go back and listen to Kai's first visit here on Staying Power, it is episode 63, again, wherever you get your podcasts. You can get some of the backstory of why she came here in the first place. But when you came here last time, Kai, all of this was still in process. It was beyond just the dream stage. Mm-hmm. It was definitely in process, but you were developing a talk, right, to talk about this kind of a synopsis, I guess, or a way to introduce the book. The book was in process. Your social media presence, your YouTube presence was all in process. All of that is now in place, correct?
Yes.
All right. So now we thought it would be a great time to bring you back. In part, great timing, right? The book is launched, but also for people to hear how things have gone over that last year and what's next and why this has, as it's turned out, resonated with a number of people, right? This whole subject has. It
definitely has. And I think I'll take a moment now if it's okay to talk about what the subject is for the new listeners.
Absolutely.
So the book is called 12 Missteps, and it is, he knows all this, so for the watching audience, I'm talking to someone, but he knows that I'm doing
I
here.
know, but that's okay.
It is for, the book is primarily about the intersectionality of 12-step programs and trauma recovery. And it's because there is such a huge percentage of people in the program who are also trauma survivors. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot to do with the causality of being a trauma survivor and then the substance use or compulsive behavior, or there's something that needs healing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people wind up in 12-step programs. However, there are elements of the program that directly contradict trauma recovery best practices. And a lot of people get there in the various programs I was in. When I first walked in, it was great. But over time, as the cognitive dissonance between what I'm being told in therapy and what I'm being told in the program that conflict got worse and worse, it was very difficult to resolve. Yeah. And I would like to, one of my main reasons for writing this book was to help other people who are trauma survivors not have to go through what I went through in dealing with that, especially over the long term.
Right. So would you classify this then as a memoir of that experience?
It is a memoir.
It is a memoir.
It is technically nonfiction. It's classified as self-help, although I don't provide any answers. I just make some suggestions and share some ideas. But it is technically a memoir, and that was also an interesting process for my first book.
Right. A deep exploration of what I know in your own experience had a lot of difficulties, your own trauma. And then that being exacerbated by some of those things you talked about, in the program. And for first-time listeners or viewers, one reason why this resonated so much for me was I was in 12-step programs myself for a very long time. And there was a lot of what you were talking about, what you were bringing forward that gave language to some things I'd wondered about, thought about when I was active in the program. And I found myself, the more I listened and the more I read, I was fortunate enough to get to read, this in advance. Mm-hmm. I went, oh, yeah, there are some things here. And I do think it's important because, so many, is there a percentage that we know of how many people in these programs are trauma survivors? Probably not.
We don't know precisely. I was able to come up with sort of a general, knowing how many people in America are trauma survivors and then how many people are in treatment for some kind of substance use. And it was, at the time, I estimated, wild estimate on the low side, about 14 million people who have probably trauma survivors who have found their way into AA, Al-Anon, Gamblers Anonymous, debtors, you fill in the blank 12-step program.
Yeah.
And so it affects a lot of people. I think I'm severely underestimating, but since I don't have hard numbers, I wanted to, at least aim on the low side.
Sure. And it's hard in general because these are anonymous programs,
very
right?
Anonymous,
right.
Yes.
And they don't even advertise, right? It's attraction, not promotion, right? That's what they always say, right?
More or less. We can talk about that. There's definitely
Sure.
some PR going on.
Of course.
But there's if they don't go on radio shows and advertise. But boy, do they pop up on the internet when you start researching things about addiction.
Yeah. And when you start talking about it, and I know that you've had some experience with that so far because you've been talking about this now online and kind of putting yourself out there for this for quite a while now. The book just came out, but your profile on this has been going on for well over a year now, right?
Yes, I've started my YouTube channel. Actually, the last podcast was the first thing I posted on that YouTube
That's
channel.
right.
It was probably in March.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been getting, there go the algorithms, a lot of engagement. They're drilling up and down, but it has been out there. And I fortunately didn't get too many trolls in the beginning. And then I toughened up as I started to get some comments to the degree that made me want to say, did you talk to your sponsor about that before you posted it? It's like there's such an urge to talk the program talk. But I also understand this program is really important to some people.
Yes.
And they do not want me to say that there might be something in it that doesn't work for everyone. So I get it. But it has been an interesting experience of putting things out there in the world and having the defense, the defensiveness come back at me. And at the same time, I've had some wonderful comments and people that said, that's exactly it. And it felt that way for me. And that's what I want to connect with us. I want the people who feel like they're the only ones in the world. I think when I met you and found out you'd been in a 12-step program, you were the second person I'd ever met who had left the program and was willing to mention it.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Second.
Yeah.
It's, a lot of people leave the program. I mean, that's a fact. What I found interesting about that whole process when we first started talking about it was I remember being in the program and when people would leave kind of like, oh no, there's that, and the literature says, as you talk about in the book and in your talk, that it says, if you go back out, you're going to die. Right?
Jails, institutions, and death is the classic AA saying.
Thank you. And I remember thinking and being worried about that when people would leave. But then it occurred to me as you were talking about this and I'd spent some time away from the program, and I did step away intentionally for a lot of reasons that resonate with things that you talk about in the book. But what I realized in listening to what you were talking about and reading what you were writing was that there's a how do you know if you stay in the program and you think everybody who's leaving is just going to go back out and their lives are just going to get worse, nobody ever follows up with anybody.
Oh, no.
No one follows up with anybody. Like I know I didn't when I was in the program. You just assumed that things were going to get worse for somebody. And in the end, what I love about what you're writing is pointing out that people have agency. And for trauma survivors, it's a reconnection, maybe a first discovery, maybe a strengthening, whatever adjective we want, of their own agency to reclaim power over their lives. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
Okay. That does run counter to some of these things, right? And I think it's important to point out that for people, and you've said this, I've heard you say it, I've seen you write it, you've said to people, look, if the program is working for you, wonderful. Congratulations. That's great. It's better than the alternative, right, of the addictive spiral. But that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about this. The fact is that it claims, the 12 steps tend to claim that it's universal. This is the way to recover, right? And you can't ever leave.
No, you can't. And it might help a little. I wasn't as clear of this on episode 63, that I started in Emotions Anonymous. I had three main programs. So I started in EA, where you are powerless over your emotions, which honestly, we all are, not over our eventual reaction. But anyway, that's a different exploration.
Yes.
But EA uses the exact same steps as AA. They just swap out emotions for alcohol.
Fairly common.
Did wind up in AA by rewriting my college years a little bit so that I could look like things were bad enough, because AA had all the best promises and they had all the coolest people, and I needed a place to belong. And so my history is a little different in that I did not walk into AA as someone who was actively drinking or had been for many years.
Right.
But it still lured me in with what they call their 12 promises. And they, losing your fear of financial insecurity of other people, finding a new freedom and a new happiness. I mean, who doesn't want that?
Right.
And then I was in Al-Anon, because once you're in AA, then you start dating alcoholics. And each of these programs has the same format, and it's all about being powerless over the thing. That's how it starts.
Yeah.
The alcohol, the other people, the emotions. And as this exact same time I walked into these rooms over the course of 2 years, I was in the very depth of early trauma recovery. And so I was being told that I needed to find my agency. I needed to become empowered. I needed to trust myself. And Al-Anon EA is telling me I am powerless over these things. I cannot trust my own thinking. And I should not have agency. I should ask my group, my sponsor, my higher power about every single decision. So it was discouraging the agency.
Yeah. And yet at the same time, if I remember correctly, that same, initially therapy was telling you should go to 12 steps.
Yes. I mean, she technically said, what harm would it do?
Okay.
But she was also, she's currently or has been heavily involved in recovery from a professional side for many years, substance use recovery. And the phrase, what harm could it do, is what she said to me. And that was actually the exact phrase that inspired this book. This book answers that question. Yeah. Here is the harm that it could do.
Yes, yes. And I think that's really the sweet spot of what we're talking about here and what's in the book, is that, look, if you're a trauma survivor, this may not be the best thing for you. And I know that's part of your audience is those people, right, who have experienced that. I think also, is it fair to say that part of your audience is therapists?
Definitely. The number of therapists who have heard my talk or heard me talk about the book and they're like, oh, I never thought about it that way. I did an interview earlier today with a trauma therapist, and she's never been to a meeting. And I have another colleague who is, she's also a clinical psychologist, and she had always, sent people to AA and other 12-step programs and said how much good it had done for some of them. But then after hearing the talk, she's like, yeah, it is directly contradiction. It directly contradicts. Trauma recovery and the steps are in direct contradiction. Yeah. It's nice to have that professional stamp of agreement.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I know what you're looking to do, and I think you say this in the book, you're looking to engender conversations and awareness around this fact.
Yes.
That these things do not intersect well, trauma survivor and trauma recovery, and the way that 12-step programs pitch themselves and say how this is supposed to work. And of course, what kind of conversation are you going to get other than some pretty interesting comments, right? Some people going, I've never thought about it that way. And then other people who, like you said just a few minutes ago, feel maybe somewhat threatened by that, particularly if they're in the program, right? So, and you've experienced all of that.
All of it, yes.
All of that. Yeah. How has that been for kind of surfing through all of that?
I rather expected the pushback. People who are in the program tend to be very convicted, and I understand, because it was very important in my life at a certain time. And if anybody tries to poke holes in that, then it's like someone's trying to poke holes in your survival. Yeah. The therapists, I had hoped that there was more awareness, but I have as an example, a friend who recently got an LMFT, licensed marriage and family therapist, got her degree, and the only textbook they used in their addictions module was the AA Big Book. Oh, wow. They had some online articles and things like that, but the big focus was the 12-step program. As if there were no other options out there. And there are, by the way, lots of other options out there, but they're not all that well known because they don't have the marketing power of Hazelden, of Betty Ford Center, of all these big, expensive rehabs promoting the fact that they work in the 12-step model. Yeah. And side note, yes, the meetings are free. The rehab is not. John Oliver did a wonderful takedown of rehab centers in a 2018 episode. But there is a profit center around 12-step programs, even though the meetings are free. So there's a reason to promote that they work for everyone, even when they don't. Because if they did, we wouldn't need fancy rehab centers. We could just send people to the 12-step programs.
That's a good point. Yeah, some of these things kind of fall in on their own logic after a while.
Oh, yes.
Right. And I think that's it. And for me, that's not a big deal. It's not a threatening thing. We're not saying that every single thing about a 12-step program doesn't work. Right? For some people, it does. The claim for me that was always problematic was that it was the only way.
Yes.
That it was the only proven way. That it was too dire for you to consider stepping away and doing something else, because why would you want to go back to the way you were? The presumption being you would go back to the way you were. And I mentioned in our last episode that for me, it started to sound way too much like how I grew up in religious environments. Mm-hmm. It began to feel way too much like that. And that's when I realized I'd kind of hit sort of my last point of diminishing returns.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I got a lot out of meeting people who had similar struggles, people who could, comfort me, right? That I could share secrets with, right? Those things had poisoned me. But in retrospect, I look back and the diminishing returns began rather quickly. And I had to come to terms with the fact, because of our conversations, that's because I'm a trauma survivor. That's why.
Yes.
And I think it's an important thrust that, as you have found out, nobody's talking about until you.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, I have a degree in sociology, so fortunately I got to put it to use.
Very good. Very good. Well, this is great. Welcome back. Let's go ahead and take our first break here on Staying Power. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with author Kai Roberts-Fu about her new book, just out yesterday, 12 Missteps, How 12-Step Programs Trip Up Trauma Survivors. And don't worry, I'm going to tell you how you can get yourself a copy here before the end of the show. We'll be right back here on Staying Power. Stick around. On Staying Power, we talk a lot about building a better life.
And a big part of that is the space you live in every day.
That's why we're excited to partner with Pars Revive Renovation, helping homeowners across the East Side and Puget Sound create spaces that truly reflect who they are.
Whether it's a kitchen, bathroom, or full home renovation, Pars Revive focuses on thoughtful design, quality craftsmanship, and your unique vision.
Because just like personal growth, your home should evolve with you.
To learn more, visit parsrenovation.com. That's PARS renovation.com and start building a space that supports the life you want to live.
Don't ask me to talk.
There's a lot of talk out there. Political talk, sports talk, girl talk, trash talk, and so on. But there's only one, Don't Ask Me to Talk, helmed by conversational off-roaders and podcast pals Eric Ryder and Stacy Heller. They follow every tangent they encounter, from cultural blind spots to their infamous weekly Wheelo topics. Listen wherever you listen to your fave podcasts. Subscribe and share too. Or tune in every Saturday at 3 p.m. or Tuesday at 4 p.m. on KKNW.
Going against the grain has never been this much fun. Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Staying Power. JD here with our special guest, Kai Roberts-Fu. Ashley is off tonight, unable to make it, but she sends her best. And she sends her best to you, too, Kai, by the way. She was here last time and was blown away, as you may remember, by some of the things that she was hearing for the first time.
Her perspective was golden.
It was, wasn't it?
I play her laugh about some of the things that she found out just to cheer me up.
Right. Absolutely. Well, anyway, so we're back for this conversation, and congratulations again on the release of the book. I know it's been a long time, and you invested a lot of time and energy into that, and it has to be really gratifying to see it in print.
It is.
That's amazing. Okay. So before we talk about where people can get it and all of that, which will be coming, let's talk about how the process was in writing it. Okay. So when I ask you to tell me about the process, what does that mean and where do you want to go?
I started writing this as far back as 2002, which is when I walked out of the program.
Okay.
I started taking notes. So it was 2002. The internet was in its infancy. I Googled articles about the program. Did other people think it was not always helpful? Did anyone else think it might be, I'll use that word, a cult? Were there people for whom it was contraindicated? And the answer that I got in the infancy of the internet was yes.
Yeah.
And I wrote a but I've always been a writer. So I wrote myself some essays that never went anywhere, but it was basically taking notes. And then because of some of the things I went through as a trauma survivor in the program, I continued. I'd been on a downward spiral, and leaving the program didn't cause it to get worse, but the program didn't leave me when I left. And so the situations I had gotten myself into through the 4-step process of looking only at your own part in things and not holding anyone else accountable, I was in a bad relationship, and I stayed in it for many years. And in the process of that, I finally met a wonderful therapist, and that therapist didn't tell me to go back to the program. And we did some serious trauma work. It was the first time I was introduced to EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which really helped me with the memories, which helped me with the trauma and becoming more present in the world, which finally led me to leave the abusive relationship, which is when the real healing began. I turned my brain back on. I started reading things the program would never have approved of. And just thinking in general was highly frowned upon in the program, thinking for yourself. And all this time, because I'm a writer, I've always journaled. That's part of being in therapy. You got to journal everything.
Yep.
I've always had a lot of notes. At the same time, one does have to make a living, so I had a full-time job, and I was teaching Argentine tango all this time. And I used to joke that when I retired from dancing at 80, I would write the book. Well, that happened. The retirement happened a little sooner than expected. And in 2020, I started writing the talk. So I had gone to Heroic Public Speaking, and it was this free weekend where you learn really important things about writing a talk. And it was fall of 2019, excuse me. And boom, in 2020, I had lots of time to write.
Yep.
And so I wrote the talk, joined a writer's group, and they said, oh, this should be a book. Easy for them to say.
Right.
And in 2022, I was visiting family in Bloomington, and I finally sat down with how to write a book and some notes, and I started really mapping things out, expanding the talk into a memoir. And for me, one of the really important things was I had done most of the internal work ahead of time. I didn't want to be someone who wrote a memoir and it was therapy for me.
Right. Kind of working it out as you wrote.
I mean, there was definitely therapy going on. I had a specific coach who was conveniently also a therapist, but her primary role was coaching me through the writing process and helping me to make sure I got it done and that perfectionism didn't slow it all down.
Right.
Although I've never been somebody who could just sit down and write, edit it all later. Like if it sounds terrible on paper, I'm not committing it. I'm backspacing until I can live with it. So there was a lot of that. But by the time it was done 2 years later, which is a 300-page book with a full-time job, that was fairly significant.
Yeah.
By the time it was done, it was in pretty good shape. I had a developmental editor, and that's somebody who, well, you know this, but for the listening audience, somebody who helps you shape the ideas or put it in order so that other people can understand it.
Yeah.
And that, took a lot of agony on some parts of trying to figure out how to rearrange it. And I'm also not one of those writers who goes and writes for 1 hour each day. The stuff I was working on was so heavy and so interconnected. I had to take a deep dive. Like I would take weekends at hotels, or my husband would go visit his family for a week and I would have the house to myself and I would just write. I didn't have to be nice to anybody. I didn't have to brush my hair if I didn't feel like it. And I could just focus on the writing. So I got it done in chunks.
There's a lot in there, I think. As a writer myself, right? I think one of the great things about writing, you can find a lot of books, by writers, sometimes not by writers, saying how you should write. What's the best way to do it? And there's always good tips here and there, but I think they have to kind of resonate and fit with just the personality and the habits and the traits that we bring to the table. And so it's going to be different for everybody. I always found in writing the deep dives to be highly satisfying. I always try to with my writing projects, I always try and touch them at least every single day. That's usually my rule when I'm in the middle of one. But those deep dives, I can resonate with that a lot, where you just sit down and go. Yeah, and I'm very much a tinkerer as I go. It doesn't quite work. I need to get that. I can't move on to the next thing until I get this somehow the way I want to write. It would seem to me though that in some ways that was not only is it an action of agency, but also a metaphor of what you'd actually already done, right? You had spent a lot of time out of the program by the time you were sitting there writing this.
20 years.
20 years. Trying all these other things, right? All the other different ways you can work through these types of things that actually are proven to help. And you kind of had to find your way with that, right? I mean, in some ways, what you're doing with the writing reflects that, if that makes sense. And I think you don't come across in the book that I read as working it out as you go, or learning these things as you go. But what was there a point in the middle of the book or somewhere in the process where it just kind of laid out and you knew where it was going to go? I know you had a developmental editor moving things around, but did it ever kind of take a life of its own where you're like, okay, here's where it goes and I'm just kind of following this path? What was that like?
Well, it was my life, so I sort of knew where it was going.
Right. Good point.
In terms of how I was going to explain the ideas to other people, I already had my core principle when I started, which is there's no one right way that works for everyone for anything.
Yeah.
And so that's been a through line the whole time. The part that's been a challenge, and the fact that this is the first book I wrote, because there needs to be another, is that I don't present a definitive answer. This isn't a new program. This isn't Kai's way to do recovery. My recommendation from the book is try it all. And if it isn't working, step away, which is a weird thing because AA says keep coming back.
Yeah.
Which is not to diss therapy, which is very difficult at times. And if you left the second it got difficult or it felt like it wasn't working, it wouldn't help very much.
Yeah.
But it's the idea of clinging on to something and trying it over and over and year after year, looking for that new freedom and new happiness that they promise you. That's what I want to get across. What I did might work for other people. What I did might not work for other people. But the idea that I am trying to get across is that that's okay because there are lots of other things to try. There are. And there are a lot of other things to try that don't make the claims of universality, right? Absolutely. One of my big gripes with the program, and you've heard this before, is I don't like the promises because they promise results. And I did a short post on YouTube about how giving guarantees is irresponsible in the mental health field. And somebody actually posted a comment, well, I think they should make guarantees because it gives people hope. Like, yeah, in the beginning, but when the promises don't come true, because as a trauma survivor whose agency is being drained instead of restored, I'm not going to find freedom from fear. I'm not going to find a new happiness because it's telling me to do the opposite of what I need to do. Yeah. So the guarantees actually made me feel much worse about myself. Yeah. Because it was logistically impossible to achieve them through the program. Now, once I left the program, I did achieve them to a degree. And I say to a degree because I'm a trauma survivor. Life is never going to be all like unicorns and roses. But I made such amazing progress that I would, had I told myself in 2000 that I was going to be like this now, would never have believed it. Yeah. And the empowerment of that alone has to be profound, right? Considering that you've done it, right? You've made the choices. They're the results of your choices, decisions, the work that you've done outside of the program, and that gets to be uniquely you, right? And that's kind of how it has to be, right? It does have to be our responsibility. And I know that I can hear, it's so funny when you talk about these things, and I know you know what I'm talking about. You can hear the program talking back, right? You know what I mean? Oh, yes. Can hear it talking back. And I want to make clear from my own standpoint too, I don't have resentment for the 12-step programs at all. I don't know if you would call it resentment for you, or if you've resolved that, or you had resentment. I don't know how you would classify that. I don't really, but only because I think I've seen it work for other people, and other people are working themselves. They have to work themselves through whatever they need to work themselves through. But I don't necessarily have resentment for it. What I don't like, and the reason I don't do it anymore, is because at some point I realized I kind of have to make my own decisions, and I kind of have to learn to live with them. And in fact, one of the reasons why I ended up in recovery in the first place, because I wasn't doing that. I was, I was trying to be everything to everyone. And that was part of my problem, right? Codependency in my world was huge. I'd learned how not to do that. But the problem was I felt like after a while, I was swapping one area of codependency in my own life and my addictive behavior for another area of codependency. Sitting in a program, trying to shape things around me, telling me what to do, that just didn't seem congruent after a while. I know I've seen comments that people have put that. I think there's people who think you resent the program, or they would dismiss it as, oh, this is somebody who's resentful. Oh yeah, she's just mad about something. Right. Well, of course, as we know, resentment is a big taboo to have at the program. So it's a loaded word. It is. I have a certain amount of wrath against those who continue to say that it works for everyone. Yeah. I know that the founders who wrote this in the 1930s, they were men of a certain social class. They were trying to let go of trying to control things so much because they thought that was part of why they drank so much and why they treated people so horribly. But I came in from a very different situation. Good heavens, I didn't have enough self-will or strength to treat anybody very badly. It's certainly not on purpose. I had exactly the opposite things that they were writing the program to cure. So I don't have resentment about the individuals in the program because they meant well and they were drowning just like me.
Yeah.
I don't like the structure. I don't like the sponsorship model where somebody who cannot make decisions for themselves is allowed to make decisions for their sponsee, who cannot make decisions for themselves but can make decisions for the sponsee below them. It's just turtles all the way down. And it is maddening that this is supported by the media. When you think of all of the movies and the TV shows that have someone in AA, and when you how many therapists just blindly send people to the program because what harm could it do?
Right.
So to me, resentment is like too little of a word for what I've got going on. I'm taking on an entire paradigm because I think that it is harmful for a large portion of the people who are in it.
And that's one of the things I love about it. See, you and I have this in common. You know, when you get in touch with that sense of agency and you feel, you know, that healing that comes and you feel a restoration or a discovery of more agency and ability to make better decisions and healthier decisions that you can stand on, it feels good. And I kind of like stuff that challenges paradigms. I'm not gonna lie. I think paradigms should be challenged. And I've been struck by some of the comments, the negative comments that you've received. My thought has always been, if you really think it's that good, why are you so defensive? Why be defensive about it? And frankly, I think if 12-step programs were able to acknowledge the very thing you're talking about, they might actually prove to be more helpful for some people than others. I think that's part of the challenge. You mentioned that it was originated in the 1930s, right? We don't give a lot of credence to things that were developed all those years ago that haven't been reevaluated and opened and researched and studied and reevaluated and revisited. We just don't do that. And yet, you're right, that does happen with 12-step programs. Like, it's been around a long time. The very standards that we don't uphold for other things, we seem to allow for 12-step programs. You know, it's existed for a long time. It needs some updating, in my opinion.
It definitely does. And your comment about the YouTube channel comments actually led me to something, if we have time to chat about, just for today.
Oh, yes.
So one of the things, I got my first request for a video, and because a woman posted that, can you talk about Al-Anon's just for today's, because they are so harmful. And that led me to do some research. So this is some little written stuff that was originated in 1921 by the Boston Globe.
Oh, wow, even earlier.
Adopted by Al-Anon in 1955 and not by AA until 1978. And it's very 1920s sounding advice.
Okay.
So maybe after the break, we can dive into this a little bit.
I think that would be good. I think that would be great. Oh, for
her name was Diane. So Diane, this one's going out to you.
Okay, that's awesome. We will do that because I think these would be great examples to illustrate to people maybe some of the things that we're talking about. Because some of these things are very subtle. But once you see them, you can't unsee them.
Correct.
And that's what I like about it. All right. So when we come back from our second break on Staying Power, we're going to talk about the things that you can't unsee with this, when you start to see this with our guest, author Kai Roberts-Fu. We will be back here in just a minute on Staying Power. Stick around.
If you've been thinking about upgrading your home, this might be your sign.
We're proud to be sponsored by Pars Revive Renovation, serving Bellevue, the East Side, and the greater Puget Sound.
They specialize in turning everyday spaces into something functional, beautiful, and tailored to you.
From kitchens and bathrooms to full renovations, they bring the same level of care and attention to detail that we talk about here on Staying Power.
Because your environment matters. It shapes how you feel, think, and live.
Check them out at parsrenovation.com. That's P-A-R-S renovation.com, and see what's possible for your home.
Hey, JD, do you want to have a better life?
Yeah. Doesn't everybody?
Yes, we do. How do I go about doing that?
A good place to start would be listening to our new show, Staying Power.
What's it about?
It's about all the ways we can overcome the challenges that we sometimes put in front of ourselves. to live a better life.
Where can I find it?
You can listen to it on 1150 AM KKNW every Wednesday at 4 p.m. and Fridays at 9 a.m. or wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's do this together every week on Staying Power.
Working hard to put a smile on your face. Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Staying Power. JD here as always. Not as always, our guest Kai Roberts-Fu, author of 12 Missteps, How 12-Step Programs Trip Up Trauma Survivors, a brand new book just out yesterday. And we'll talk a little bit about where you can get it here at the end of this segment, which will be the end of the show. But Kai, you did a really nice tease right at the end of the next segment. So well done on that, right?
Thank
Keeping
you.
people coming back. To talk a little bit about the Just for Todays.
Yes.
And this is for one of your viewers, readers.
A YouTube viewer named Diane who requested that I talk about this. One of my actions in the book is to expose people to things inside the program they might not have heard about, whether it's the promises or some of the slogans like your best thinking got you here. And this is the Just for Todays that I first encountered through Emotions Anonymous in 1989.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And this, as I mentioned earlier, was written in 1921. And I'm going to do my best to read it without the reading glasses.
Now were these things that get read in meetings? Like
Oh,
as part
yes.
of...
So we would study these. So when I was at EA in Al-Anon, we would like pick one of these to talk about for a whole hour. And people would share their experience, strength, and hope about these Just for Todays.
Okay.
So it is worth noting as I start to read these that this was first in Al-Anon, which was primarily for the wives of the men in AA. Okay. And then to note, as I'm reading, look for words like not criticizing, speaking low, and for heaven's sake, dressing becomingly, which is part of the Al-Anon literature. Just for today, I will be happy. This assumes to be true what Abraham Lincoln is rumored to have said, that most folks are as happy as they make up their minds to be. Mm-hmm. So I quibble with this because that's not true if you're a trauma survivor. That's not true if you have manic depression. I remember someone in our family, it was said of them, well, they just want to be depressed. I'm like, no, they don't. I tried very hard to make up my mind to be happy when I was in EA. However, rampant trauma and PTSD running through my system got in the way of that. Mm-hmm. Now, some of this is good. Just for today, I will strengthen my mind. I will study. I will learn something useful. I'm skipping ahead. Just for today, I will adjust myself to what is and not try to adjust everything to my own desires. I will not show anyone that my feelings are hurt. They may be hurt, but today I will not show it. Just for today, this is so fun. I will be agreeable. I will look as well as I can, dress becomingly, talk low, act courteously, criticize not one bit, not find fault with anything, and not try to improve or regulate anybody except myself. And it goes on.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. That's a recipe for winding up in an abusive relationship, which I did, thanks to the program. That's a recipe for lying to yourself and others around you about how you feel. Yeah. Also a recipe for spending a lot of money online shopping so you can dress becomingly. Sorry, it was the 1920s. But anyway, I know that your programs didn't use this, so you may have heard some of this for the first time.
First time.
Reactions, thoughts?
It underscores what I think I was trying to say last segment and didn't say very well about how old the program is. And we know so much more now about human psychology, about trauma. You mentioned several things. PTSD, not a concept, right? I mean, basically it was known for soldiers, but it was shell shock, right? We know so much more now around depression, around neuropsychology, neurobiology, that takes into account so many more things than a program in the 1930s could have even dreamed of. And for that not to be taken into account, and I'm sure there are individuals in programs who do take these things into account. And I know some people in programs who are still in programs today who have these conversations, who are open about the challenges they find in the program, and yet they choose to keep going because it still benefits them. Okay, fine. But that type of thing, my first reaction to that is, whoa, no. All those things you mentioned, it's a recipe for never knowing what agency is.
Absolutely. And it reminded me that when EA rewrote this from 1921, this is what I was handed. Just for today, I will try to be happy, realizing my happiness does not depend on what others do or say or what happens around me. Happiness is a result of being at peace with myself. Mm-hmm. This was devastating in my life because, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, as being a trauma survivor, there was no inner peace. Yeah. This was never going to happen until I had the trauma therapy that I needed. Mm-hmm. And they put it down there that it was my fault that I wasn't happy.
Right.
Yeah. That is so counter to modern psychology. And this was probably the early 80s, I'm guessing, on when EA was founded. Mm-hmm. We knew a lot more then.
Yeah.
But they just kept copying. It's like when you copy and paste something, make too many Xerox copies, then each one's a little bit weaker and a little bit more diffused.
Yeah.
It never got any better. It's all based on AA and
it assumes that, and this is the other thing with the model of how addiction works in the first place, that's part of the problem. And that is that the assumption is in these programs that the reason why you are an addict, an alcoholic, gambler, whatever, has everything to do with just you.
Yes.
Even though in every other area of studying human health, we recognize environment, we recognize peers, we recognize trauma, mental health challenges and issues and illness, physical illness, right? All these different things. And yet here it's kind of this last frontier of lack of integration with this kind of thing. And I'm sure somebody could say there's other areas that need updating. But if you don't know to look for that, this is the other reaction I have to what you just read. Mm-hmm. If you don't know to look for that because you're pointing it out, or Diane pointed this out to you, that could slip right by you, some of this stuff, right? Could slip right by and go, okay, yes, it's about me taking responsibility for myself. Okay, I certainly knew that when I entered recovery, I had things I needed to take responsibility for. And yet there was not anything that came for a long time that took me out of the driver's seat of blame. Right? Where I could share that and go, okay, well, this comes from something else. Mm-hmm. Things happened to me. My response was A, B, and C. And over time, this became problematic behavior, right? That was really hard. I felt solely responsible. And no matter what I felt in program, when I felt relief or connection with other people, I could never seem to escape that sense of there is something fundamentally broken in me that cannot be fixed. And that's in the end the thing that I think resonates so much with me with all the work that you're doing and all the things you're talking about is no, you can't just stop there if you really want to heal and really want to grow. You have to be able to say, I can do things on my own. I can heal on my own. I can learn to be my own boss, right? It's not being powerful, right, as opposed to powerless. It's actually showing that you have capacity and agency, and you can develop discernment. Because in the end, what program do we know of any kind where you don't actually leave it at some point?
Aside from the 12-step programs?
Well, yeah.
Yes, you go to meetings the rest of your life. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic.
Right.
You can't turn a pickle back into a cucumber was one of the ones. There is no graduation. There's only jails, institutions, and death.
Right.
This was from an article in the 1950s. Anyway, that's Dr. Jelenic. He's talked about it in the book. But no, you're not... In therapy, you're encouraged to eventually leave. The goal is to get you out of there because you are doing better.
That's what I mean.
And in AA, the goal is to keep you in there and keep you dependent. What I mean. And it's actually stated in the book, big book, that their goal is to make you, well, I'm butchering it, but it's in the book. You can read it. Yeah. In my book. So yes, the goal is not to get you to get better and graduate and go out and live your life. The goal is to keep coming back. Yeah, because, and that is the message, because you can't live your own life. Exactly. That. And I just got to the point where I wasn't willing to accept that anymore. Correct. And I decided that come hell or high water, whatever the consequences were, I was going to, take what I learned from there that was beneficial for me, ironically, leave the rest, right? Another one of the sayings, ironically, I left the rest. And what I've taken from there that I've applied in my own way, right? Answering to myself and to the people that know me and that I'm connected to, that has served me well. But there's been a lot more that I've added in that the program never would have liked. I would have been told that's not a good idea. Absolutely. The buffet of recovery options and choices that we can make, especially these days, what's out there is amazing. Oh, yeah. And it's a constant search for the things that work for each individual. Yeah. And yes, so absolutely. The program encourages you to, or discourages you from making outside friends or trying anything else. And a good trauma, for me, trauma recovery has been about trying anything that worked. Yeah. And several things that didn't. But, right. And and interestingly enough, it always drove home to me the idea that if I'm so hyper-focused on my recovery, am I still not struggling with the obsession that caused me the problem in the first place? Yeah. Because it's flipping the coin over, but it's the same hyper-focus. It's a hyper-vigilism. Is that a word? Hyper-vigilance? Vigilance. Yes. Thank you. I was going to say vigilism is not a word. Vigilance is that
to me was just as stressful, in focusing on it in staying sober, if you will, as it was when I was trying to get out of this problematic behavior before I ever entered recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt stuck, right? And so the fact that that's how you're talking about this, when the first time I encountered this, I went, oh, some language to this. It's really good. And I know I am not the only person this has resonated with. I remember having conversations with you where you were wondering, I have no idea. Am I going to be just yelling out into the void and nobody's going to respond?
Mm-hmm.
Not only have you gotten responses online of support and some trolls, right? Support. You had some pretty big people who kind of bought into this. And you've got some acknowledgments and some endorsements for this book that I think people would like to hear about.
I will mention them briefly.
Yes.
One of my biggest influences as I began thinking about writing the book was Dr. Lance Dodes' book, The Sober Truth. He also has a book called The Heart of Addiction, which is a different theory, which is a lot more about solving the trauma or the issues for the person, and that tends to resolve the substance use issues.
Yes.
So I wrote him, each of the authors I'm going to mention, I sent the book to and said, would you consider writing an endorsement? And he endorsed this book with probably my first favorite endorsement, which is scientifically accurate and beautifully written. So to get a Harvard professor saying that this book is scientifically accurate, it means ever so much to me. Maia Szalavitz, who wrote The Unbroken Brain and Harm Reduction, she also wrote an endorsement. Johann Hari of Chasing the Scream and The Magic Pill. He's one of my heroes for deep investigative journalism on a variety of subjects. Aimie Apigian, The Biology of Trauma. So these are all authors in the trauma recovery space that have also, the first two have definitely questioned the 12-step programs. And once Aimie and I started talking, she's like, yes, because I got to interview her. To have these people standing behind me with all of their degrees and all of their acronyms and my humble bachelor's in sociology, it really tells me that I'm on the right path.
Yeah.
That they are willing to put their names to it. And I hope that encourages other people who will be like, well, she doesn't have a PhD. I have a lot of lived experience. And then I have the words of other authors who study a similar subject to say that, there's something worthwhile here. Yeah.
Yeah. There is something in there that reduces the ability, if people are really honest, to dismiss it as just this is one person just saying what she wants to say.
Yes. Although if anybody wants to buy the book just to argue every point with me, I'm all right with that too.
Yeah, that's fine.
Please.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, I know, right? However you want to read it. And I think that has to be super gratifying. I mean, because I remember the conversations with you first. You're like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea how this is going to go. And those are big names, right? And they've done a lot of work in this, and they're thoughtful, right? And your book really is thoughtful, and it's certainly packs a punch, right? Your personality is in it, right?
Oh, yes.
That wrath you talk about, I think is a good word. That's definitely in there for those who just continue to claim that this is the universal answer to everything. And my hope is that it invites people to, not just people who can resonate with your experience or our experience in this case. Like, okay, I've always thought that, or I always wondered that, or that was my experience. But also maybe open up people who really want to defend this to the hilt, that maybe they can incorporate this into their thinking and they'll actually be okay, because they will be.
They will.
They can be, right? It's important. And yeah, the discovery towards our, moving towards our agency and grabbing that, everybody's going to have a different path on that, right? And yet, there's so many things available now, so many books. All of their books are useful, right? All of their methods are useful, can be explored. I think that's part of the excitement I have in the book too, is that you're kind of giving individuals their ability to be individuals again.
That is the hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So we have a few more minutes. Let's talk a little bit about how people can get a hold of this. I know you had a big launch party yesterday.
Yes.
And all of that. And so all those people are lined up. I'm already lined up for my copy. I'm excited about it. Where can people get this? And can they get print copies? Can they get digital copies? Tell me a little bit.
All of that will be true eventually. Currently, the paperback is available on Amazon. You can simply Google my name or 12 Missteps, and it pops right up. The ebook will probably be about 4 to 6 weeks out.
Okay.
And then the audiobook I plan on recording through July and August. So
Perfect.
That will be in my own voice. That will be I haven't recorded an audiobook before, but I've done a lot of voice work, so that will
Perfect.
come out. You can find me on YouTube. Just type in KaiRobertsFood.com. I think you have all those.
We
all
do.
those
And we're going to
links.
put all the links up for
Okay.
everybody, by the way. But I just want you talking about where you
Okay.
can get the book,
So yes,
'cause
and
it
you
sounds
can
good.
even pre-read about 57 pages as of this morning. Amazon decides how much of your book will be available for read a sample.
Oh, okay.
So if you'd like to, sample it before you take a copy home, you can do that. And yeah, so it's a paperback. I don't have the world's greatest eyesight, so this is deliberately typeset to be easy to read on an eggshell paper, so it's neither too dark nor too light.
Oh, there you go.
For us folks of a certain age, I'm just saying you can probably still read it before the ebook comes out. Yeah, wow.
I know. It's got to be a wow, right? It's got to be a wow.
It really is.
Yeah, and so all the links at all of our, wherever you find Staying Power, as a podcast, on our YouTube channel, at our website at 11:50 a.m. KKNW, we will put links in the show notes. You can go find them right now. And you can open up the links at Amazon, and we will make sure to announce on the show when all these other versions are coming out.
Okay.
So make sure you're letting me know when the audiobook is coming out, when the digital copy's coming
Absolutely.
out. We'll make sure that we put links out there, because everything that you're writing about in this book in some ways resonates with what we talk about every week on this show. This is developing resilience. You have been on a journey of developing resilience and your own sense of self and your own sense of belonging and how. And it is a journey. It is. And I think it's one that we can all take responsibility for and not be so afraid to try different things. And if something isn't working, admit that it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have to despair, though, do we?
No.
I mean, it's go find something else. Yeah, absolutely. Really quickly, in the time that we have left, any favorite part of the book, any favorite story, any favorite kind of moment?
There are two that jump to mind. One is when I actually take people to two different meetings. My very first smoky one in my hometown of Bloomington, and then one of about
Indiana,
a year.
right?
Bloomington,
Yeah.
Indiana. Because back in the day, everybody was smoking through their health giving program, and then another one where it was the air was clean, but it was the same program. So if you've never been to a meeting, here's your chance. I try to be as accurate and in the moment as I can be describing it. And then I also talk some about my life in Argentine tango, and there's a chapter where I use tango as a metaphor to kind of summarize everything. So for all you tango dancers out there, everything's a tango metaphor. Mm-hmm. So that's there too, and that's probably the most poetically written part of the book. The rest of it's a lot more conversational.
Got it. So those are the ones that stand out to you.
Yes.
Very good. Very good. Anybody you want to thank publicly?
Oh, that was an unexpected question.
Mm-hmm.
My bonus mom, Vicki Thompson, who has supported my writing since my early 20s when I first met her. All the various people who are subject matter experts, the therapists who are both friends and people who have read and given me feedback for this. It has been peer-reviewed in the sense that many therapists have read it before it's gone out in the world. And
I think that's important.
All the friends that have supported me and the heroic public speaking community that helped me stand up and say this out loud. And you, because you've let me talk about it for 2 hours now.
Absolutely. It's awesome. We could do 2 more. You say something at the very end of your talk. I don't know if you want to give people there's something at the end you talk about. People are not powerless.
Yes. I talk about the various ways people can help, that therapists can become more aware, that friends and family can listen attentively. But for the trauma survivors, I remind them that if the program fails them, it's the program that is the failure, not them. Mm-hmm. That they can keep fighting for their own health and happiness every way possible, that they have agency, that I'm going to switch to the second person, that you can influence your own story. Because if you've made it this far, it's clear to me that you are not powerless.
Mm-hmm. There we go. We're just going to put a bow on it right there. Kai Roberts-Fu, thank you for joining us on this very special episode of Staying Power. Congratulations once again on the book. Thank you to all of you for listening to this or watching this episode of Staying Power. And remember, you can find the links to buy a copy, peruse a copy of 12 Missteps on Amazon, and you can find all those links in the show notes. And best of luck with everything going forward. I think this is just going to get bigger, better, and broader. So thanks so much to you, Kai. Thank you, all of you, for listening. We'll be back next week. Ashley will be here, and we will look forward to seeing you then. Thanks so much. See you next week.